dropped off tourist, this drive right here. This is where a lot of the biking and skateboarding takes place. Overweight to the right, down went there. That house right there, that brick house, my friend had a perfect mini ramp with great transition. No one ever got hurt on it. Had coping and everything. It was a great ramp because he knew how to make a skateboard ramp. So you skate on, but we called them mini ramps because they did not have vert. Vert is vertical. They never went vertical. They just well, it wasn't a slow transition. It was actually a pretty quick transition, which is better. You don't want an extremely quick transition. You want it somewhat quick. Now, when I was about 16, I had a Cavalier, a red Cavalier. It was like a Chevrolet, 2-door. I was coming down this road and the lady was going here. It was raining really hard. And I applied the brakes and began to skid down this road and hit her about right here, causing her to go into this yard. I immediately got out of the car. My friend was with me, and I said, go back to my house and grab my insurance, because I didn't know for sure if I had my insurance card with me. My friend ran full speed down this road here to go grab my insurance card and then bring it back to my vehicle. And the lady hurt her ankle in the wreck. But we did have insurance. I had a friend that lived there, right there. And that's where Catnappers takes place, right here. Circular. That's where we lived, right there. At 5921 Circular. And we egged this house, and she called Piggy. We had to go over there and clean up all the eggs off this lady's house. My sister stole cigarettes out of this lady's car, which isn't there right now. That lady's dead. And she smoked the cigarettes in the car too with her friend. And Piggy was called on that one too. My friend Sean and I, who's now Scroll, we took some poop and put it on a car right there. Put it in a bag. We pooped in a styrofoam cup, and then we took the poop, put it in a saran wrap, and left it on the windshield. True story. Don't know why we did it. It was his idea, but we actually left poop on their car. Didn't even know him. He got in trouble for Piggy for carrying around tonfus, which Piggy used to carry around too. They're just like a little stick. He said they're illegal to carry around, but the Piggy that was telling him to do that was carrying one himself. Later, Sean, or Scro, would go to prison for having a sheet of acid on him at a concert in Dallas. He did some time, and then he went out to Europe. He was a squatter for a few years, became a DJ and culinary cook. Now he has his own house in Oregon. Another friend of mine had a Trans Am, and his dad gave him like 5 or 6 Trans Ams. He was coming right here off of Reeves, full speed, at a full stop though. He was fully stopped right here. He stopped his vehicle, the Trans Am. He gunned it full speed. I was right behind him when he did it. I was back there. He gunned it. He fishtailed right here, full fishtail, complete fishtail back. Tried to gain control, didn't. Hit this telephone pole right here, smashing it and cracking it over. The city had to correct that telephone pole. It fell over probably at a 45-degree angle or worse. Nearly knocked the telephone pole down. Totaled his car. Immediately transmission fluid started leaking from the car. I thought it was gas, so I told him to run. My other friend said, no, don't worry about it. It's transmission fluid. We thought it was gas. And he got out of the car and started running. They towed the car away. He totaled 5 to 6, I think it was like 6 vehicles. Don't remember his name. His name was Shay. And he had, he'd always wear these stud bracelets on his wrist. They were like a punk rock thing, real big in Metallica. He wrecked about 6 cars. His dad was in the insurance business. True story. His dad made a fortune off of it. They're all accidental, though. This is a road we had walked down in Men, who I just released on Facebook, a little short story. This is the road we'd walk down, Old Denton Highway, right here. We called it Old Denton Highway. Don't ask me why, it was just a nickname. We'd walk all the way down this road from Circular to buy my sister Marble Light cigarettes. And the guy would sell it to us every time, and we were 12 years old. Never questioned us. He was like a Middle Eastern guy, or like an Indian guy, or from Middle East or something. But back in the day, we called them sand ends. It was right there. And it was a gas station. Right next to Burger Box. Here's a new gas station right here. A friend of mine, Verlo. Well, I'm not passing that part. I'll tell you about it later. Bought a quarter bag over there on that way. I was with him at the time. We're all listening to Journey, waiting for the quarter bag to show up. We're big Van Halen fans too, and we like Metallica. There's all these roads have stories. We didn't go over here that much, but we had some friends that lived over in this area as well. This is the road called Reverie or Revere. R-E-V-E-R-E, however you want to say it. There's a squirrel over that way. See it? All right, we got to drop off this Sonic chili cheese dog, foot-long chili cheese dog. Yeah, it was right here in this church parking lot. He bought his first quarter bag, or one of his quarter bags. Felt real funny doing it too. The guy like had us wait there a long time. It's like, here it is, man. Thanks, appreciate it. Nowadays, they're probably selling that shit in a vending machine. California, they already sell it in a vending machine. Looked like the number looked different. Another true story is there goes a squirrel. My mother's dad, which would have been my grandfather, he was half Apache. He lived in this area. He was a mail carrier. And he used to pray over every envelope when he would drop it off. He was Jehovah's Witness. And he would, yeah, the guy's waiting outside for me. He's like looking at me real weird. Because I went to the wrong number, I think. There it is. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big Stephen King fan, but I haven't read all his books. But he's not the only writer in the world. It's one thing I hate about Hollywood, is they think of the only writer in the world as Stephen King. He's not the only writer. He's not as good as Hemingway. He's nowhere near as good as Fitzgerald. I mean, they'd laugh at his work. I mean, they'd laugh him right off the planet. You know? This comic book writer sitting there trying to compete with us. But, you know, he had his heyday. He can keep trying to make Pet Sematary Part 3. Or what do they try to remake? They keep trying to remake Pet Sematary. This is also a cool area right here. Never figured this area out. Back in the day when Ghostbusters was popular, we always saw this as kind of like a Ghostbuster mecca. You know, kind of like this was haunted. And those gates were always closed when we were younger. They were never open. They're open now. But it doesn't go anywhere. And back in the day, there was so much shrubbery. This is back in the 80s. There was so much shrubbery right here, you could not see what this was. Now that they've opened it, it's actually nothing. We always thought there was like a haunted mansion there. Now, I was educated in 1st and 2nd grade at Glenview Baptist. I was raised Baptist. Later, I would end up at the New School University trying to achieve my MFA in New York City. But I was actually enrolled up here. It's no longer Glenview Baptist, but Glenview Baptist is about a few miles down the other way. They turned it into a bigger campus. But back in the day, when it was probably like maybe, shoot, I don't know, probably like early 80s. Ronald Reagan was in office, I remember that. Gerald Ford was turning it over to Ronald Reagan. Thank goodness. And Ronald Reagan took office. And this was Glenview Baptist. Now, we were made to watch the induction, and I know you have another word for it, but it's whenever the president swears in, the swearing in of the president on a television screen in a trailer at this Glenview Baptist when Ronald Reagan became president. I remember it like yesterday. And we were sitting in a trailer, because they had trailers on the other side of this building. And we all stood up and said, "Pledge allegiance." This was a Baptist school back in the day. They were pretty patriotic. And my uncle would pick me up right over here and take me a few miles down this way to my grandma's. My grandma lived over here. And I remember one day, and I'll never forget this day, but we were supposed to bring our lunch. It was bring your lunch day. And I didn't bring my lunch. And that means we were not accessing the cafeteria that day. The cafeteria was like cleanup day or something. So I had nothing to eat. Now, all my friends offered me their lunch, but I would not accept it. I would not accept a single bite from any of my friends. And I sat there by myself and had nothing to eat, and everyone else ate their meal. That day, my mom pulled up in her Mercedes. My dad had got her a Mercedes station wagon. And there, sitting right next to her, was a foot-long Sonic. Or, no, I think it was a cheeseburger. Yeah, it was a cheeseburger. And I ate the cheeseburger with my mom right over here. And the teacher allowed me to skip class to do it because they rewarded things like that. Also, another thing, too, is in that house, we had classes, and over here, it's still there. See that thing right there? That was there when we were younger. We'd walk under it. It protected us from the rain. It was a rain gutter thing right there. And we'd walk under that to get to class, and my first grade class was right on the other side of that rain gutter thing right there. That white rain gutter. I guess it was in a house, but it was more like kind of a trailer. It was a wide load house is what it was. And it was right there. That's where my first grade was. And there I was brought before the class because a kid had insulted me because we were listening to an Elvis album. And I told him I had the Elvis album at home, and he called me a liar. So he brought, the teacher was a female, and she brought the kid before the class and had the kid apologize to me. And the class watched. Now, after the kid apologized to me, it wasn't over. Then the teacher looked at me and said, "Now you accept his apology." And I said, "I accept your apology." And she said, "Now say it like you mean it." And I looked at the kid right in the eyes and I said, "I accept your apology." Later on, I'd be diagnosed shortly with dyslexia.
Approaching a railroad crossing.
So I was writing my numbers backwards. So if you write the number 01, I'd write it 10, or 02, 03, 04. Most of the times you wouldn't write 01, but we had a special assignment. So I started writing the numbers backwards. So if I wrote 23, I'd write it 32. If I wrote 24, I'd write it 42. Well, the principal of this school at the time was in a wheelchair. He cured my dyslexia in one day, in one visit. He had me sit down next to him, and he had me write down 1 through 30. And every time, well, he had me do it all at one time. Then when I finished, he said, what do you think is right and what do you think is wrong? And we pointed through the numbers, and we would get to the number, like, let's say 23. He'd say, what number is that? And I'd say 23. He said, no. And then he would point to the ones I did right, which was the number 11. He'd say, well, what number is that? And I'd say 11. And he'd say, that is correct. I go, oh, okay. And he says, do you see why that's wrong? And so my 10 looked like 01. I said, oh, yeah. And I just switched it right there. And I went and wrote it down again, and I wrote it 1 through 30, and I wrote it all correct. He said, that's the right way. Then I left the classroom, or I left his classroom. It was the principal's office. And by the time I had left, I was no longer dyslexic. That's a true story. It happened in one day. It was one day I just went dyslexic. I don't know how it happened. And then he showed me the right way. And he showed me how to write the numbers correctly. And he cured my dyslexia in one day. He was a great principal. We also used to play Tumblr. It's kind of like football, but you had to touch someone from the waist down. And we had these little flags. It was just like football, but we'd have to capture someone else's flags. And one day I won against the whole little classroom, and there was at the very end there was 2 against 1. So there were 2 kids against me, and I captured both their flags, and I was the one no one touched my flags. So I actually won that day. And the principal was there in his wheelchair and congratulated me. And then at the end of the year, I got 1 award, and it was for the physical education award. Actually, true story. I got the physical education award, and that was it. That's what I was awarded. I was very athletic. And soon we'll be going by my grandma's house, and I have a really good story about that one. This story is about home invasion. This is Diamond Lock. It's a real place. It's an upper end. So people here make more money than most people. Back in the day, there were future millionaires that lived here. And it's called Diamond Lock. It doesn't look so fancy now. But my grandma, Marie Spivey, and my grandfather, Claude Spivey, lived here. And we had many great times, many great Christmases here. Well, my grandfather and my grandma would employ Hispanic people to clean their house. It was this house right here. And my grandfather was in the jewelry business for many, many years. He actually started his own jewelry business. He taught my father how to refine jewelry. Back behind that fence right there is a backyard. My grandfather would go in the backyard to take his morning piss in the tomato garden. There waiting for him were 2 men with voice changers. That means they could change their voice like this. The kind of things that you would use when you were smoking too many cigarettes and you got diagnosed with cancer. Well, they had guns and they brought him in through the back of the house. At the time, I had broke my ankle, so I was at my mom's house on the other side of town in Circular in Haltom. My ankle was broken and I was with my mom. My sister was there, but she was in the back room asleep. They brought my grandfather, Papa, into the living room and threw him down on the ground and covered him with a blanket. When my grandmother, Marie, came out, they grabbed her and threw her down and covered her with a blanket. She resisted, so they grabbed a globe and knocked her on the head with it. The man told her, "If you move from the blankets, we'll shoot you." So they laid under the blankets. They stole $250,000 worth of jewelry and were asking her, "Where is the gold?" And my grandfather refused to tell them. The gold was hidden underneath the house in a safe, probably over $1 million worth. And they never retrieved it. These neighbors here had shotguns. My sister jumped the fence right over this way. I'll show you the window. See this right over here? that far window, way in the back, by the brown fence. She jumped that fence and landed over there, ran over to this house, and got these neighbors here. These neighbors took their shotguns and ran across to the street and banged on the door. The thieves immediately jumped in their truck or vehicle. They don't know. I don't know what it was. And there was a shootout all through these roads over here. And the neighbors chased them and shot. And the shootout continued all through Diamond Lock, all through here. And they chased them. Went on all through here. And they were shooting them with shotguns, trying to get them. They never caught the thieves. They think it was Hispanics, possibly maybe even illegal aliens that did it. They don't know for sure. No one's confessed. No one was caught. I personally think they were police officers that did it. It's my own personal opinion. Because they were armed. But they wanted that gold, but they were never caught. No one knows who did it to this day. If they were hired to do it or what. And they never caught them. Chase went on back that way because they jumped the fence in the back. I'll show you that in another vlog. Luckily, no one was killed. My sister ran to the neighbors to take shelter over there until they finally began to investigate it and hired some detectives to investigate it, and also local police. I think it was probably local Haltom police that did it, disguised as bandits. No one would have been that brilliant. They blamed it on the illegal aliens, but I don't think they're that sophisticated to get a hold of a voice changer. Another theory was Zeke, who was Claude's brother, had a voice changer because he was diagnosed with throat cancer. And they think maybe he might have done it. I don't know. To this day, I don't know. My theory was it was a local police department that did it. They just disguise themselves as bandits. Police can be criminals too. But I don't know. It could have been anybody. To this day, we do not know who the thieves were. But we do know it happened. Now, they did go in the room that I was in, looking through the room and the closet and everything. But I wasn't there. I was at my mom's. And they weren't able to get me. I don't know what I would have done because I had a cast up to my hip. My cast went from my ankle all the way up to my hip. I couldn't move. Well, I mean, I could move. I had crutches. But, you know, they could have just walked in there and killed me. They could have turned into a bad situation. But they didn't. Because there is a God that knows exactly what happened. Now, in Catnappers, there is a moment where they see these people dressed up like cards, like playing cards, like a jack, a queen, a jack, a queen, a king, an ace, and all that stuff happens right here. That's where the parents see the people dressed up. And that's where we played live action Dungeons and Dragons. We played Dungeons and Dragons, live action Dungeons and Dragons. We called it Borderlands. We dressed up like elves, wizards, and fighters, and clerics. Now, where the truck came up and found me and put the lights on me was about right up here. And I was walking out of these woods right here and came up and stopped right there. And the truck stopped right there and put the lights on me. And we all began to run into these woods. Where Scro and I almost drowned, which we survived it, the inner tubes, was down here. But a long time ago, there was a bunch of brush right there. That would have killed us, but we got out because of rope swings. We were able to hang on to rope swings. And this is Fossil Creek right here. This is where a majority of Catnappers takes place. The story that I wrote and self-published under Ash Cole. True story. And it's still here today. The wasp nest, W-A-S-P, the wasp nest was right up in here. The one that's in the story. It's amazing. There's a squirrel right here. Who in the fuck would that be? Do they even have a... I guess they clean... Now this baseball field was here. And it is mentioned in Catnappers, the story. And we would start by going in through over here or over here. That's where we dressed up like ninjas and ran around with firecrackers looking for the satanic cult known as the Catnappers. And this is where the story will be filmed. When I get the funding to film it, it'll be filmed here. I want it filmed on location. I'm different than Stephen King.